Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Okay, so today is a super exciting video. We've got a lot to cover, and I guess we got all day to shoot it, really. But what we're going to do is I got the microscope with the camera, with the TV out, and I have got the sharpening stones and the strop that we're using on the opinel edge test, the coarse versus polished series. And we are going to take a very close look at these stones up underneath the microscope, and then take a look at the corresponding edge that came off of that stone, just to kind of see what we see. I think you'll find this pretty interesting. You'll get to see how the stone surface looks and what that does to the steel, and I think it'll be pretty exciting. So we have got the TV, that's 27-inch monitor. We've got the camera, let's turn that on, and it's going through the stereo microscope, and we've got a very dusty, this is a bowling ball vase. So what you do is you take a bowling ball, flea market bowling ball, right? I don't even know how much I paid for this, or maybe it was a yard sale bowling ball. Somehow I came up with a bowling ball, and then I cut it in half. Boy, let me tell you, if you ever cut a bowling ball in half, use a power saw. I did this with like a carpenter's saw, and it took half the dang day. All right, then you take this half a bowling ball and you set it in a dog water dish. Now you can position whatever it is that you want to look at pretty much wherever you want underneath that microscope. So to start off with, let's do the DMT 325. Let us turn this to that. I forgot to get y'all a stand. We have shop bricks. Okay. Now y'all are right in front of the screen. That is very unfocused. Okay, that is a water droplet. That is the surface of the stone at pretty much the lowest setting. And honestly, I don't even know what this setting is or how much magnification there is. So let's see. You know, I usually keep a penny here on the bench somewhere, just so you got a size reference. Ah, there it is. Okay, so as a size reference, there's the top of Lincoln's head. Let's go to the trust, or the T. So that's, you know, that's what, I mean, a penny is about like that diameter, and that's what you're seeing right now. So now we can zoom in a little bit. Now we're not going to be able to get both of them in focus at the same time, I don't think. Okay, now let's go a little bit more. Let's see if we can get the edge of that penny in there so you kind of see how big it is that we're looking at. There's the rim of the penny. Oh, no, let's see. Okay, that's as high as we've got at the moment. And there is, come on. And there's the rim of the penny right there. Okay, so that kind of gives you a size reference as to how big these diamonds are. Okay, now what we are looking at is we are looking straight down on the sharpening stone. Okay, so what you see right here is all these I mean, from what I'm gathering when I look at these, you know, these right here, these shaded areas, they're either going to be voids or they're going to be, you know, divots. Or maybe right there, maybe the bright parts, that's probably what it is. Those right there are the tips of the diamonds. All right? But you can really see how uniform the spacing is. I don't know why my table's shaking so much. Kind of looks to me like the whole dang thing is shaking. But anyway, you know how nice and uniform they are. I mean, sure, you've got some, you know, some voids that don't have diamonds and everything. But remember, this is a bunch of diamonds that are sitting on top of a steel plate. And there's glue holding the diamonds onto the steel plate. So let's see if we can't look kind of sideways at it. Let's just adjust the vise up. Let's put a pin in there. Pin in there and a pin in here. Now let's come out. Okay, so now what we've got here is, you can see I've got the stone set on an angle, you know, in the bowling ball vise. So now we're kind of looking sideways on it. And we're going to need to kind of mess with the magnification a little bit. So now you can kind of see how fine all these little bitty points are. Okay, now this is zoomed out. We can go ahead and zoom back in and see if we can't pick the picture back up. It's kind of coming in waves, the way the light's reflecting off of that now. No. There, but see how many of them they are, and see how nice and pointed all of these, you know, the ends of the diamonds are. That's really important. So now let's go ahead and turn it flat again and see if we can't pick it back up. There we are. Now let's look at the edge that it creates. So here's the opinel, the 325. And honestly, I can't remember what I did last with the edge. There. I think it was cutting the poly rope. Well, this is a good picture of this edge. Okay, so this here is our blade finish. Okay, that's the finish on the side of the blade that was created by the, you know, the belt grinder or the buffer or whatever it was the opinel used to make it shiny and nice to look at it. This right here is our sharpening angle. Okay, can you even see that in the camera? Maybe we need a bigger pointer. There. Okay, so from here to here was our sharpening angle. All right. And then from here to here, that is our micro bevel that we use to finish, you know, take the burr off and finish the edge up. Now let's see if we can't get a little bit closer in. Okay, that's as close as we can go. Now, what we're really after right here, and this is a big reason why this is one of my favorite stones. Now this I can tell, this edge, I didn't clean it, I didn't resharpen it after the poly rope test. Okay, but what we're looking at, is not only the peaks, because these are like 325 grit serrations, right? I mean, if you've got a 325 grit stone, okay, then that would mean that you'd have 325 grit scratch, or a scratch pattern, right? Which means that each one of these scratches are going to be roughly, you know, 325 grit size. Okay, so if you want more peaks and more valleys, you would have to go with a finer stone. Okay, so a 325 grit edge, you could kind of sort of think of it as being 325 teeth per inch, right? Like a saw blade. So a 7,000 or a 6,000 grit edge would be 6,000 of these little bitty teeth per edge. All right. Now, I'm not sure if that's exactly how it's measured. It's probably not, but it's a good way to think about it like that. The greatest thing about diamonds is that they leave, or at least the ones from DMT and Smith's, I know for sure because those are two of my favorite diamonds, is that they are so sharp, they leave such a sharp tooth. Okay? So if you had a sharpening media that was not very sharp, but it was still a, how do I put this? Okay, so if you had so let's say you got two 325 grit stones, right? One of them is a 325 grit stone that is made up of very, very sharp diamonds. And then you had another 325 grit stone that was made of very dull diamonds, okay? The dull diamonds would not cut as sharp of a tooth as the sharp diamonds would. So you would still have two 325 grit edges, but they would perform completely different. The one with the sharper teeth would cut more efficiently and with less force than the one with dull 325 grit teeth, if that makes any sense. Okay, so that's 12 minutes. Let's go ahead and go to the King 6000 grit stone. The nice thing about this is that the scope's already set up. We've already been talking about all this, so it should go a little bit quicker. Now, and we need a taste of coffee here. That is the surface of our King 6000 grit stone. Completely different, right? Okay, now remember the diamond stone is a metal plate with diamonds. I'm not sure how they manufacture those, but they probably take the steel plate, and then they use a spray gun and they spray some sort of a glue on top of it, and then they spray the diamonds on top of that, right? And then they let the whole thing set up, and then, you know, there you go. This stone is completely different. Pretty much what they did when they made this stone was they took a whole bunch of grit, okay, and if I remember it right, this is like an aluminum oxide grit. So they take a whole, you know, pile of this grit, right, and they pour it through different screens. And the screen has got, you know, different size holes in it, okay? So the 6000 grit screen, you know, only lets 6,000 grit and finer particles go through it, okay? Now, once they have, you know, a mess of this 6,000 grit abrasive, now what they do is they mix it up with a glue, and then they press it into a mold, and then that's how you get the stone, okay? So, with this type of stone, you have got from here to here of that 6,000 grit abrasive, which means that when this top section goes dull, you can take one of these hone blocks and pretty much scrape off the top edge of that stone and get rid of all the old abrasive particles and expose new abrasive particles that are still nice and sharp and ready to go. In fact, in this one right here, you can see a scratch pattern that's left in the stone. I don't know if that'll pick up on the GoPro or not, but there's some scratches right here. Now, whether those are, well, let's see. Okay, so that's, see if we can't pick up my pencil point, because the camera rotates underneath the come on. Where's that pencil point? Okay, so these scratches right here are the scratches left by you know, whichever grit that I used to surface it last. Okay, you know, to clean the, you know, old metal shavings and you know, whatever, you know, dust, all that kind of trash out of it. So you've got a very nice clean surface. Now here's a 6000 grit opinel. We might have to back out a little bit here. And maybe tilt this. There. That's what I'm wanting to show you, right about there. No, not quite. We just need to tilt it a little bit more. That's the funny thing with microscopes, is that you can make a picture say pretty much whatever you want it to say just by how the light reflects off of the steel. Alright, so here, now remember the edge that we use for the 6000 grit stone, if we were to use a micro bevel like we did on the 3000 grit stone, the particles of this stone are the glue that holds it together is so soft that if you try to do a micro bevel, pretty much you just start shearing more grit. Alright? Whereas the diamonds are so solidly set into the top of the stone that you can do a micro bevel on them and you're not going to shear the diamonds off of the plate. Okay, so on this stone what we do is we set our bevel with the 1000 grit side, and then we refine those bevels on the 6000 grit side. Then once we have our bevels shaped and to the proper grit, then we stone strop to get that burr ready to remove it. Then we pull that burr through a piece of soft wood to rip the burr off, and then we come back with a couple of stone stropping strops to kind of fix up the damage from ripping that burr off. Okay, even though the burr is really just kind of barely holding on, it doesn't really take a whole lot to, I mean, you're not really ripping it off, you're just basically kind of flicking it off pretty much. So anyway, so the 6000 grit edge is quite a bit smoother. Now this one is also worn because it's cut an awful lot of poly rope. But you can see how much smaller those teeth are. I mean, those teeth are so small that what we're running into here is, frankly, we're running into the limits of what my camera can show you. And I want to say, I mean, that's a pretty fancy camera. It's a, oh, what did my wife tell me? It's like the pixels. It's like a 30 megapixel doohickey something or other. Okay, so it's a pretty quality camera, and what we're running into is that the pixels are not fine enough to be able to show how fine the scratch pattern is at the edge. Or it's that the edge is kind of worn down quite a bit. So let's get up in here where the point is, because the point would not have gotten near as many. That's the problem with those the little USB microscopes, is that the pixels really just can't, they can't show you what you're after to see. Now here you can see at least a little bit more, but you're having a hard time seeing the individual teeth that are on that edge. All right, but that's a 6,000 grit edge. I wonder if we can get the 325 right next to it. There. I mean, it's out of focus, but there. It's kind of out of focus, but you can still see the points of the teeth from the 325. There. Now see how the difference? Yeah, I can't hold steady enough to show that, but that shows you the difference in between the teeth on the 325 and the 6,000. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the chromium oxide side of my strop. Oh, my camera timed out. Now, this is what our chromium oxide looks like. Okay, now one thing to remember here is that this is not a hard surface. You know, I mean, this is a paste that is pressed into some linen. Okay, so it will abrade much finer than what a hard stone will. Okay, and we just use this in a stropping manner, but you can see, you know, exactly how fine this stuff is. I mean, I really am having a hard time picking up individual points of light, you know, reflecting off of the paste. And you can also see, I mean, these little bitty flakes right here, I mean, that's pretty much, you know, dust from the air and, you know, in the shop getting, you know, kind of you know, just landing on the strop. I mean, it's kind of, you'd rather it wasn't there, but I mean, you buy a brand new strop, you paste it, you use it twice, and then pretty much dust is going to be on it. I mean, it's just the way it is. But anyway, so you can even see how it's kind of cracking, you know, where it's kind of caked up on the strop. But anyway, that's how fine of an abrasive this is. Now let's go to the linen side. Now this one you're probably likely going to see a whole bunch of trash in it. You know, this was a flea market strop, and I kind of cleaned it as best I could. But I'm not too sure you ever get them completely clean. So now this is the fibers inside the strop. And I'm not sure what kind of linen this is made out of, but you know, if they're cotton fibers or not. And of course all the black stuff is just, you know, trash, steel particles, shop dust, household dust. You know, can also be, since you strop your razor on the linen after a shave, typically you palm strop it first to get rid of, you know, an awful lot of the, you know, the blood and you know, pus from zits and skin particles and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You palm strop it to get rid of most of that before you strop the edge on your linen to dry the edge out, you know, on your straight razor after you get done shaving. So the linen, you know, it'd be nice to swap it out on a pretty regular basis, but I don't think anybody ever really does. So anyway, so that's what your linen side looks like. And this is what makes your final edge. This is the leather side. Now, like I said, you know, there's no abrasive in this at all. You know, this is just a piece of, I think this one's horsehide. Just horsehide, okay? So, but this is what creates that final edge on, you know, the polished edge on a straight razor. And, you know, this is... you know, the what creates that polished edge on our polished knife, opinel. So there's our 30,000 grit mark. Now, like I said, this edge has been, this is the poly, you know, the edge right after I did the poly rope test. And what you're looking at here is this right here is a mirror finish. I mean, it's kind of a hazy mirror finish. The entire edge was. But now these scratches were put there by the poly rope that I did the cutting on. Okay, so the poly rope is actually abrading that edge as it gets cut. So it's taking the edge and taking it back in here, but it's also abrading the sides in. Okay, almost, kind of, sort of, almost like maybe I wouldn't even really call it a self-sharpening deal, because you're abrading the edge back in at a faster rate than you're abrading the sides. But you can see that there's no teeth on this edge at all. Let's see if we can't get up to the point, because the point really wouldn't have contacted the rope. Now, yeah. And like I said, here again, we're pretty much running into the limits of the camera, you know, in the megapixels that it gets. But you can kind of sort of see that, I mean, we can't see any teeth in here at all. Which you wouldn't expect it, because it's being finished by, you know, straight up leather. Okay, so that's our 3 edges. Now, right quick, now that we've kind of looked at some edges and seen the steel, or the effect that they have on the steel, now let's go ahead and take a look at the other 2 stones. We're at 28 minutes. Yeah, we'll take a look at the other 2 that... this right here is the Norton Crystalline stone. Okay, this is the coarse side. Now, a little bit, kind of about halfway in between the other 2. Okay, so this is kind of like the king stone, in that you've got 36 grit and finer stone particles that are mixed together with glue and then put into a mold to make the stone. Okay, but see how much, I mean, see how big these, I mean, because these are, see, this is the coarse, so that's I want to say like an 80 grit or something like that, maybe 100 grit, you know, stone particles. Here is the fine side. The fine side of this stone is also about a 325 grit range. But remember, I mean, as far as I know, they put these things through that mesh, you know, that is probably a 320 grit size mesh. So the only particles that you're going to get in here are going to be 320 grit or finer. All right. But this being a crystalline stone with silicon carbide, you know, and I just reconditioned this yesterday, I think. So that's a fresh stone that hadn't even, or a fresh surface that hadn't even seen a knife yet. So all the points are still really nice and sharp and make a really nice edge. And then I think I usually use the 300 grit side of this stone to clean up the water stone with. And we're going to have to adjust the... This is a pretty thick stone. That is what your Harbor Freight diamond hone block looks like. Now remember, this is an interrupted surface instead of the solid surface. So this is your little scallops right here. But, and I think a lot of what you're seeing here is the diamonds are kind of being pressed down into the glue, because this stone, I mean, I use it pretty much to condition other stones. I don't really sharpen knives on it, and so it gets beat up pretty quick. So put you up there. So yeah, so that's, you know, a really nice close look at the three sharp, you know, the DMT 325, the King 1000, 6000 grit, and then the strop that we used to make the edges on the opinels for the whole, you know, the whole series of tests. So that, you know, and honestly, that might be quite a bit more than what the normal guy wants to really look at. But then again, you know, it's kind of interesting seeing, I mean, because you look at that, and all I see is shiny metal, you know, with, you know, I mean, you know, kind of a finish on it, you know. I mean, I can't really see what the diamonds look like in here. This one right here, the same thing. I mean, I can't even see individual, you know, particles right there. I mean, I just can't see them. My eyes aren't good enough. You know, but now we know what the stone surfaces look like, and then what the corresponding scratch pattern on the steel looks like. And to me, that's pretty fascinating type stuff. So again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.